Hi, this is Kevin with Map Practical. This is Intro to GIS Lab 5, and this lab we're going to make a topographic map with shaded relief and contour lines. So I give you some data for this one. Got it over here in my folder, my Intro GIS Lab 5. Got a raw data folder, and inside I've got two pieces of data. One is this Missoula quad. If we preview it, you'll see it's the Topo Map of southeast Missoula, and then the other one is the matching DEM. It's always a good idea to take a look at the spatial reference on these things. So just look at the properties here. And this guy's in NAD 27 UTM zone 12. Great. Then I'm going to take a look at my quad. It should be in exactly the same thing. And it is. Great. If you wanted to correct if this was in a different one, I would always project the topo map to whatever the DEM is in. If you're going to use the Hillshade tool and the contour tools inside of ArcGIS, I would recommend leaving your DEM in its native spatial reference so that those tools will work properly. But we do want to make a geodatabase. So just right click on my lab, not the raw data, but on my lab folder, and go to New, File Geodatabase. And then let's name that guy, the command and goal, _lab5. Super. And we're not going to make a feature data set because we're just working with raster data. And you can't put raster data inside the feature data set. It's only for vectors, but we can just right click and say import raster data sets. And this tool will pop up. And I'm going to throw the quad in there. So that's the topo map. And I'm going to throw the matching DEM in there. Say OK. And just let that rip for a second. Great. And then let's check the geodatabase, make sure things came in. So there's our quad of Missoula, and there's our matching DEM. Super. All right. So I'm going to start up an ArcMap document. And as usual, we're going to go with My Templates blank. It's a good idea to set the default geodatabase to this week's geodatabase, so Lab 5. Say Add, and we'll say OK. And then I'm going to go ahead and say Add Data, go inside my geodatabase and add both of these guys and see what we get. All right, let me check the instructions, make sure we're on the right path. Okay, so when your DEM is coming in, our catalog might ask you if you want to build pyramids. You can say yes. It might come in totally black. That's usually just some problem of the stretch type. So let's take a look. Here's the display tab for our DEM. I always resample during display to Bilinear Interpolation. Just makes it a little smoother so it's not as pixelated. And then I'll go over to symbology. And you could leave it as %clip, but usually I'll do a standard deviation on it. Say apply, and it still looks the same. That's great. I'm going to turn that one off, and actually it goes below our quad. Our quad is just our reference, but watch, if I zoom in on the quad here, you'll see it's kind of pixelated. It's even kind of hard to read some of the labels. So we're going to go ahead, oops, the wrong one. We're going to go ahead into the quad's properties, and on the display tab, I'm going to also change this guy to Bilinear Interpolation, and watch what happens when I do that. Boom, it just cleans up all the labels, takes away some of the pixelation. So this guy is the model, right? The only reason that we have the quad in here is so that we can use it to grab some features off of it and digitize off of it later. And it helped us find our DEM. If you wanted to make a map of a peak that you enjoy instead of just this one, you're welcome to. And in the instructions for the lab, I send you a website where you can download topo maps for the whole United States, going back in time as far back as they have them archived, and then also another website where once you know the quad name, the county, and the state, then you can find the matching DEM that'll go with it. But if you just want to move along, you can use the data that I provide. Okay, so everything is looking good here. We've got our standards going, and next thing we need to do is fix this, right? So our display projection needs to be fixed for a central meridian that's right here in the middle of our map, and this is Missoula. Because this little sideways kink, that just doesn't look great, but it's really easy to fix. We're just going to go to the data frame properties, and here's our NAD 27 UTM zone 12. I'm going to right click on that and go copy and modify. And from our previous labs, the center of Missoula is -114. So I'm just going to change that central meridian. And I always like to throw a little mod up here on the name so that I know that it's a modified projection. Say OK again, and dunk, there we go. We just straightened it out. Now it's a good idea to save your ArcMap document. This is going to be Lab 5 Topo, or whatever you want to call it that makes sense for you. Say save. And there we go. All right, so I'm just going to turn off the quad for a while and turn the DEM back on. Super. So the first thing we want to do is create a hillshade. If it's your first time using some of the extension tools in ArcGIS, you have to turn them on. It's nice they make you buy them, but then they don't turn them on for you. It's not that hard though. You just go up to Customize, Toolbars, Extensions, and then make sure that 3D Analyst and Spatial Analyst is turned on. If you run the tool and you don't have these turned on, you'll get an error that says, sorry, you're not authorized to use these. So you are authorized if you're working through any of the school computers or one of the student evaluation copies of the software. You just need to turn them on. So then we're going to go Search and Hillshade. And then you can use either the 3D Analyst one or the Spatial Analyst. They're exactly the same. And so this tool will pop up. We're just going to throw our original DEM in there. And then the output raster, if we set our default geodatabase, should be in there, but I'm going to go ahead and change the name and just call it my hillshade. Great. And the azimuth is the location on the compass rose where you would have the sun location. In this case, it's in the northwest corner. That's the default for most shaded relief. And then the altitude of the sun is at 45 degrees, so halfway between the horizon and straight up. And the z-factor, as long as we haven't played around too much with our spatial reference, 1 is the right answer. If you have a DEM that has its XY coordinates in a different unit than its Z coordinates, for example, if you had data that had Latin long for X and Y, but meters for your Z, then you would have to convert with a Z factor. But right here, 1 is all fine. We'll let it rip. And there you go. There's a hillshade. It does a pretty good job right out of the box, right? So this is Missoula, this is Mount Sentinel right here, campus is about right here, this is Mount Jumbo, Hellgate Canyon with the Clark Fork River, and then Mount Dean Stone and some of the other peaks over by Miller Creek. Looks pretty good. So we're going to create this hypsometric tinted topo map, but you can also just take your original quad, put it over the top of it, and go in and take a look at the display and make that about 50% transparent. And look at this nice look. We get a really cool looking topo map over some shaded relief, right, with the mountains and so forth, and then University of Montana up here. If you wanted to make your own hiking maps, this would be a really cool way to go about it, right? Okay, I'm just going to turn off the Missoula quad again. So we got this nice hillshade. If I want to zoom to my layer on the hillshade, I can right click and say zoom to layer. That works, but I can also hold down the Alt key and click on a layer and it will zoom to that layer. Okay. Let's make sure that our hillshade is as smooth as it can be, so we're going to change this to Bilinear Interpolation. And then over here on Symbology, minimum maximum is fine, but I usually go with standard deviations, and usually of an n number of 3. See how that looks? Darken it up a little bit, but that's okay. All right. You could lighten it up on the brightness contrast. You can play with those different stretch types. That's fine. So now we're going to we want to create some different overlays over the top of it, right? So this DEM is in meters, as I said before, but our American audience is going to want to deal in feet. So we're going to have to convert the DEM. So we're just going to search for times, and a bunch of tools show up, and then the Times Spatial Analyst or 3D, either one works. And this is just a multiplication tool. So we're just going to drop our original DEM in there, and then we're going to multiply it by a constant. And if you don't know how to convert from meters to feet, you can just look it up on Google. So it's 3.281, right? So it's going to multiply every single pixel in the raster by that constant. And then we're going to make sure that it's in our Lab 5 geodatabase, and I'm going to call it DEM in feet. And let it rip. And it's just going to create a new DEM. You don't notice much difference visually, but you can see that it has different units. So this one starts at 3,169 and goes up to 7,026, where the old one was in meters at 966 to 2,141. Okay, so now our original DEM, we can just turn it off. We want this guy down here. And let me show you about a hypsometric tint. Let's go ahead and just go into our DEM in feet. And we're going to also turn this into bilinear interpolation. And while we're here, I'll just make it 45% transparent. I'm going to go to the Symbology tab, and I'm going to change this to some kind of semi-natural color, so brown to yellow to green, right? And I'm going to change this to standard deviations and hit apply. And there you go. So it's taken and stretched the color across the total amount of elevation gain and loss. And for me though, I like to see Missoula kind of how it is here in the fall, with green in the valleys and browns and yellows up on the hillsides. So I'm just going to hit this little invert button here and hit apply, and there you go. Okay, that's a pretty good looking hypsometric tint right there. That's one way to see it, totally stretched, right? Let me make sure I'm looking at the, yep, okay, cool. The other way you can do it though is you can actually classify it and have the colors break along certain elevation gains, say the 1,000 foot marks. So I'm just going to make a copy of the DEM, copy it, and then click on layers, right click and paste it. So I've got 2 copies of my DEM in feet. I'll turn off the bottom one, and I'm going to go in and change this guy. So instead of just having stretched, we're going to do classified, and then we're going to go ahead and pick, I think 4 classes is what it will be, and then change it to a different color scheme, maybe the same one we were using. And then if you hit this classify button, you'll be able to see a histogram of all the pixels, right? So these are all the different values that are inside of this DEM, and there's a minimum, 3,169, and a maximum. And then over here are the break values. And I just want to change this right on even break values. So I'll start at the bottom and do 7,000, and then just hit my up arrow key and 6,000, and my up arrow key 5,000, and up and 4,000. Right? And then the down arrow key just to lock it in, and hit OK, and then hit apply. And what you see is that now it's breaking the colors right on the 1,000 foot contours. And that's another way to show your topo maps, right? So you can't go below the lowest value in a minimum. You could go above the highest value when you're setting those classes, but just be aware you can't go below the minimum value inside of a DEM. All right, say OK. Cool. So the next thing we want to do is generate some contours. And it's not that hard. It's probably a good idea to save when you're in the middle of these things. I'm going to search and just grab my contour tool. And then just pick the first one. I'm going to just drag my DEM feet in there. And these are going to be contours DEM feet. I think it needs the 1 on it. That's great. And then what you do need to set though is the contour interval. So what's our contour interval on this particular guy? Let me check and make sure. 250 feet. Normally on a topo map it's 40 foot, but then they get kind of tight. We're going to go ahead and just make it 250 so we don't have too many. Right? Base contour, we'll leave that at 0, and Z factor and all that is just fine. And then we're just going to hit OK. We'll let it run, and there you go. So see, it generated contours every 250 feet, and then every 4th one ends up right on the 1,000 foot mark. Now the normal way to display that is to have an index contour that's a little thicker, maybe even a different color, right on the 1,000 foot marks, and then the other ones, the intermediates, be a slightly thinner line in a different color. So we're going to do that next. So we'll go into our contours here. Let me just keep checking. Yep, so on our symbology tab right here, right now it's a single symbol, and it's just this green line. We're going to go to categories and tell it to pull from the contour field, right? And then we're going to hit add values. We could add all values, but that doesn't help us here. We're going to go to add values here, and we're going to just choose the 1,000 foot intervals. So I'm going to do 4,000, 5,000. I'm holding down the shift, oops, excuse me, I should be holding down the control so I can get ones with skip and the ones in the middle. So holding down control, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, and 7,000, right? And I'm just going to add those 4. So now I have 4 in here. I'm going to grab this time with shift. So grab the 4 and the 7. So everything is selected. Right click and say group values. Cool. So now I have my index contours and all others. I'm going to go into my index contour symbolization just by clicking on the line. And if you scroll down here, they already have one made for contours. So right there, contour index, boom, we'll choose that. And then on my all other values, same thing, scroll down, and they have one for intermediates. And it's right there. And then when I hit apply, you'll see we got a pretty cool look, right? So we've got an index contour on the 1,000 foot mark, right? Every 1,000 feet gets a nice index contour, and then in between is a different intermediate contour color. So, and to tell you the truth, I'm more into having mine be hypsometric tints that are stretched across everything, so I'm going to turn off that DEM and turn on this other one, and I just think that's a better look for me. That's just how I like my maps. You're totally welcome to do your map any way you want. Okay, now we want to label these contours. I'm going to save. First things first, we definitely want to turn on Maplex. So we're going to go to the data frame properties, and then on the general tab, and then right here under label engine, we want the Maplex label engine. I don't do anything without Maplex. The standard label engine just doesn't do a very good job. Okay, and now if we were to go inside of here and go to the label tab and just turn on labels by checking on this, we're going to tell it we don't want it by ID, but we want it by contour, and just hit apply. And what you'll see is there's just labels all over the place, hanging all over the map, right? So the convention, though, is to just label the index contours and not the intermediates. So we need to do a little bit of a label expression to make that happen, okay? So how that is we're going to go ahead and first let's go ahead and do the placement properties. We're going to tell it that it's a contour placement, and we're going to go to this position and tell it that we want it to be centered and straight. That's great. And then options under contour placement, uphill alignment. We don't want people to have to turn the map over to read our contours. And then you can choose laddering or no laddering. I think I tend to go with laddering. And that just means that they're going to go right up the hill, and you'll be able to find the next contour where you expect to see it. And we'll go ahead and just apply that real quick. Okay, we do have some uphill ones, and so we don't want those upside down. We're going to change that in a second. So the next thing we need to do is modify this thing so that we just label the index contours. So under label expression, the standard here has got not much in it. If we hit advanced, you'll see there's a little bit more code in there. I have a label expression in the instructions all ready to go for you. So I'll go copy it now, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this guy and then paste in the one I just copied. And so what it basically says is find the label in the contour attribute. If that contour attribute is a modification of 1000, then label it. If not, don't. That's basically all it says. We can verify it, see if it likes it. It does. And then let's say OK, and let's hit apply and see if it worked. Not bad. So there we go. So now we have some labels on the different contour just on the index contours. It made our map a lot less messy. So now we can also go in, and also the convention would be to break the contour line behind the label, but that's pretty tricky to do inside of ARC. So the best we can hope for on a fast map would be to just go into the symbol for the type, and then we would go into edit symbol, and then we would go on over to mask and tell it halo. And that halo is going to be white right now, but I'm going to go under symbol here and choose like a nice tan or something, and actually no outline color, and instead of white I'm going to go with a brown that kind of, how about something like this little topaz sand? That works. And OK, and OK, and OK, and OK, and hit apply. And there we go. So now our contours have a little bit of a halo, and they look okay except for the upside down one. So we're going to have to fix that next. All right. And I'm going to save my document. Just checking my instructions, make sure I've got everything that we need. All right, we got the halo. Okay. One of the last little steps for the contours is annotation. You can play around with all those settings under the Maplex label engine and get these looking as good as you can, but then at some point you're going to find that you just can't go any further by letting the computer do the labeling, and that's where annotation comes in. So to do some annotation, we're going to right click on our contours, and then right down here, convert labels to annotation. We're not going to convert them to graphics, we're going to convert them to annotation. That means they're still attached to the data in the geodatabase. And we're going to leave all the defaults in here, right? And we're going to say convert. And what this does is it gives us another feature layer, right? So it added another layer up here, and it turned off the labels under the contours. You'll see that they're turned off now. So the labels we're getting are actually coming from the layer above. All right, cool. And now we have a little bit more control. I'm going to right click on this annotation, and I'm going to go down to edit features and start editing. And you might get a pop-up, yep, like this. You can just say continue. And then you're going to get an editor toolbar that pops up. And the editor toolbar has a number of different editing settings, including this little editing tool that has an A next to it, and that's for annotation. So what I can do is zoom in here, and you can see that my 5000 is kind of straight up and down. It'd probably be better if it was facing uphill, kind of like this one is, right? So I click on this guy and it highlights it. Now I can rotate it, right? And I can also move it, but right now it's got a setting where it wants to follow the feature mode. I'm going to uncheck that so it doesn't do that. And now I can move it anywhere I want it, rotate it, move it again, and place it right where I want it, and then click off. When you're working with these things, make sure you don't hit this little red triangle. That's going to resize it, and it's going to get really big and crazy on you, okay? All right, so, and then now, while you're in the edit session, the move is just to look around and try and find upside down labels and fix them. So this 6000 right here, probably don't need it. It's very close to another one. So I'll just go ahead and right click, don't follow the feature, and move it out here in space because I think I might need it another place to do some. This 6000 right here, I'm going to go ahead and move it and unfollow. Put it right down here, maybe keep turning it a little bit. So you really have a lot of control with annotation, right? This 6000 again, upside down, right click, don't follow the feature, rotate it, and I think I want to put it about right here. That looks pretty good. Good. Let me zoom out and see what I got. Got a couple of 6000s, I got a 5000s, 4000 there. So we got some things that are upside down. And sometimes it gets a little tricky, like this 4000 here, if I can zoom in on it. There's not a whole lot of places you can place it where it's not facing upside down. There is a spot down here, but this one's kind of in the way. But that one doesn't really need to be right there. What if we right-clicked, remove this follow feature, and then put it up on the side of the, oops, let's get a hold of it. Come on now, there we go. Threw that one in there, and then this one, put that one down here and then facing up the hill. So remember the convention is you want the number to face up the hill but not be upside down. That's the trick. That one's getting close, but I think we can live with it. This guy, it's not looking good. Let's turn this one around. Yep. So maybe the best we could do, actually I could probably get it totally vertical right there. Right there. Great. That 5000, don't need that to be upside down like that. Where could we put it? Maybe over here. And then people can just follow the contour around, right? Yeah, that's not bad. About right there. Okay. All right. And then let's see here. That 6000 that I left hanging up there, I think I'm going to use it down here because it looks to me like we could use another 5000. So there's the 5000 is way down there, but we could use a 5000 like over here. So I'll go ahead and move this over. Oops. Oh, it's still attached. That's the problem. So unfollow the feature, put it down here, but it still also says 5000, right? That's no good. So in order to change that, the Create Features toolbar should pop up over here, and you just have to click on that, and then you're going to have to click on this default right there, and then you're going to have to change the text. Let's see if I can do it. Construction Tools, Follow Features option. I should be able to change its text. No, that's not what I want it to do. No, 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 no. Don't want that. I'm going to go back to my A tool. Oh, that's all I had to do. Double click on it, right? And then it's the 6000, and then now I can change it. Now I can go right in here, hit 5000, and then hit enter, and oops, not enter, and then apply. There we go. Now it's a 5000. Cool. So once you have all of your contours set up, right, and they're looking good, you don't have anything upside down, then you have to remember to go under Editor, Save Edits, and then Editor again, and stop editing. So a word of caution, I probably should have said this in the beginning. Once you start an edit session, you can then modify anything on screen. So if you were to accidentally click on one of these contour lines and move it, you can totally displace it. So you have to be very careful when you're working inside of the editing tool. Okay, so let's go ahead and zoom back out. All right, so now we're looking pretty good. I don't need my editor anymore. Let's save. And we're getting close to being done with our layout. At this point, it's probably a good idea to go into the layout, set some guides at your half-inch marks, 10 and half-inch down here, right? And then take your data frame and snap it into it. And then go over here to your zoom in tools and fix zoom in and just work it till your map is about as big as you can make it and still have some room to do some work. So see, I went one too far and it's cutting off some of it, so I'll go one back, and then I'll just use my hand tool and give myself a little bit of room up on top to label it. Okay, all right. And now I've asked you to go ahead and label 2 features on this thing. So add 2 different features. One of them is a physical feature, like a physical geography one, and then one of them should be a man-made feature. So what's the best way of doing that? Well, you could go try and find GIS data, but then you'd be trying to clip it and cut it to the extent of your map. What about if we just use the draw tool and this Topo Map that we have? So I'm going to put the Topo Map up on top, turn it on, and now when I zoom in, I can use the Topo Map as a guide to my features. So I'm going to zoom in here. So when you're getting ready to use the draw tool, you need to have a fixed zoom level and be in the layout view, because the graphics that you're about to put on the map, if you change your zoom value, then your graphics are going to move around and it's not going to work. So make sure that you're in your layout view and you have everything set. And then if you don't have your drawing tool, that's just going to be under Customize, Toolbars, Draw, but I have it. And then underneath here, I've got a little ellipse. So we know that there's a nice oval here in I'm just going to draw an oval. Cool. Go in and change its color. Maybe make it like a nice green for the grass out there. And maybe make no color around a circle. So there's our oval on and then I'm going to get my text tool and I'm just going to type in University of Montana, right? And then you can click on that guy and move it wherever you want. So there's my cultural feature right there. And if I turn off the quad, then you'll just see it over the top of your map. I noticed that my little green circle doesn't show up, so maybe I got to go with a lighter green. That's okay, can do. Let's try something like this. That's a little better, right? So there's the University of Montana, and then I want you to do some natural feature, a physical geography feature. So what could that be? Well, let's turn on our Topo Map again, and Mount Sentinel right there. So I'm just going to go in and grab a marker and just click on the top of Mount Sentinel. Boom. And it's a little bit big, so I'll just make it a little smaller. There we go. And I can right click and go in here to properties, and I can even change the symbol. So if I wanted to look in here and try and find a little X marks the spot, I could do that. Ah, there's one right there. How about that? And apply. Boom. Again, a little big, but no problem. I can rechange the size here too. So I can take this guy down, try it maybe at 10. There we go. Yeah, maybe even smaller. There we go. Cool. Say OK. And then again, I can go ahead and grab my text and just label that guy. Mount. Is it an EL? Yes, it is. Mount Sentinel. Okay. And then I can take that guy right over here, put it right next to the point. I'm going to turn off my Topo Map. I'm going to zoom out. So inside your tools for your layout, there's this great tool, zoom to whole page. There we go. So now all I need to do is add all my marginal map information. I'm going to add a title, Missoula Topo Map. I'm going to put my name down here. I'm going to put a scale bar. I'm going to put a north arrow somewhere on the map, and then some projection information. And a quick tip about the projection information. So if we go to Insert, Dynamic Text, Coordinate System, it gives you this huge block of text. And it's just too much information. We did modify this, so we definitely want to tell people that it has a different central meridian, but all the rest of the stuff we don't need. So we right-click, convert to graphics. Now we can right-click, go to Properties, and now it's text. Now we can get rid of all the stuff that we don't need. North American Datum 1927, we tell them the same thing in this first part of it, so we don't need to tell them again. Transverse Mercator, that's part of UTM, don't need to tell them that again. Right? And so now you've taken that huge block of text and turned it into something that's a lot more manageable that you can just put into your layout. All right. If this was a helpful tutorial, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and the instructions will be down in the description of the video. Have a good one. Take care.